All right, we're live. Here we are, Burlington on the spot. Timothy Pautler.
Oh, Tim's fine.
Tim, I'm glad I finally got you in here.
Well, we've been working at it for a day or two. But
we've been trying for about 8 months.
Well, the pandemic kind of changed things, too.
It did. It threw us off a little bit. But let's start out. Give us a little introduction about, your background and all that good stuff.
I've been a farmer my entire life. I was born in 1954. Grew up in the 60s with all of its turmoil. Farmed from day one. I mean, I knew what I wanted to do when I grew up. I was going to be a farmer, and never went to college. Got a high school education, and that's it. Married my wife, Elizabeth Stegman, in 1975. We've got 3 daughters. My brother Gary and I have a partnership, and we formed that in 1976, and it's still ongoing. That says a lot because most partnerships don't last quite that long.
That's tough, yeah, especially with family.
The farming piece is grown over the years, renting more ground, not so much ownership, but the family farm is still intact, but we lease quite a bit of other ground. So.
Right. How did you know you wanted to farm from day one? I mean, was that because you grew up with your family farming already, or?
Yes. I mean, I drove a tractor as soon as Dad would put me in one, and I didn't realize that probably shouldn't have started so early because it got old pretty fast.
Yeah.
But it was just what I wanted to do. I mean, there was something else that I wanted to do, but I just didn't think I wanted to venture out that far, way out of my comfort zone after I got out of high school. Should have went to college.
Would you have gone to CU then, or is that why you're wearing that? Or
no.
If you're listening, he's wearing a CU. I'm CSU, so that's why I had to say something.
It's
there.
fine. It's fine.
It's all good.
I wanted to get into computers when I got out of school.
Oh.
But the fear of going to college, I'm a slow reader, honest to God. I mean, that's been a problem for me my entire life.
Huh.
But I read every word. I can tell you exactly what I can tell you what color the dress was, how many polka dots were on the dress, if it tells you. And I was scared to death to go to college because if they gave me a 3-chapter English lit assignment, I'd be up all night.
Wow.
And so I just kind of said, you know what, Dad, if you're okay with this, I want to farm. So
that took you down the path, and you've been doing it ever since.
Yep, pretty much.
Right on. Well, and I met you, coming out to the farm, helping you with some stuff. But one of the first things we started talking about, and I want to talk about today,
sure,
not just farming, but water.
Right. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So, and it fascinated me because, and we'll go down this path, but I had a really older, wise person. I'm not going to say names, but
that's fine.
You of course, but also, I had another, you're younger, sorry, older than you. He told me though, he said, hey, I have a piece of advice for you. Keep your eye on the water table for living out here. And so, and I mean, give us a little background on what your position was with water, and let's dive in there a little bit.
Well, the water piece of it's very near and dear to me because where I live over northeast of Stratton, I've got approximately 17 feet of water left in the hole. So the table has dropped from, let's say, in the early 60s when this aquifer was being developed for the economic gain of the communities. Uh-huh. Probably had 50 or 60 feet of water in that hole. Today it's down to 17. And agriculture's pumped out the lion's share of that, granted for the economic gain of all these communities. But what's left, we've got to start really safeguarding. And agriculture is going to have to take a different look at it because we can't just keep doing status quo operation out here because right now it's a race to the bottom. And I'd like to see that consumptive use reduced. And there's a movement to try to attain that. So that's a good thing.
Good. So you were on, it was the Republican basin. Was that like the water committee? Or I remember walk me through that again.
Yeah. I'm on the Plains Groundwater Management District, which is the local groundwater district. We've covered the eastern 2/3 of Kit Carson County.
Okay.
That's how I got involved in the water piece. But then in 2004, the state was in trouble on the Republican River basin.
Okay.
The compact between Kansas, Nebraska, and Colorado. And I was appointed by the county commissioners to represent Kit Carson County on this board. At the time, it was a 15-member board. Is that right? Yeah. There were 7 counties, 7 groundwater management districts, and 1 other appointee from the Groundwater Commission. So that's 15-member board at the time.
And that was way back in 2004.
2004, yep. And I represented the county for 15 years until just this past fall when I was appointed to the Groundwater Commission by the governor. And Steve Kramer took my place representing the county, and I now represent the Colorado Groundwater Commission on this group, the Republican River Water Conservation District.
Okay. So when that board was formed, what was the purpose of it?
To assist the state of Colorado in compact compliance on the Republican, because in 2002, well, about 1998, there was a lawsuit that was starting. There was trouble on the Republican. Kansas was not happy with Nebraska or Colorado. So Kansas sued for more water on the Republican drainage, according to the compact, about 2000 somewhere. And Nebraska enjoyed that so much, they said, hey, if we're getting sued, Colorado, come join us.
Oh.
So we got drug into it. We just finished up a big deal down on the Arkansas. The state spent $30 million on a settlement, plus probably easily another $30 million in attorneys, and just going through that whole process for 10, 15 years. They didn't want to do that up here. So they formed this by statute. We're formed by statute, and to assist the state to stay in compact compliance. And as of today, we are in compact compliance.
What does that mean exactly? Because I know nothing about this.
That's fine.
And I know there's going to be people listening too, I mean, so what does that mean, stay in compact compliance?
We're the upstream state. We can consume so much water out of the aquifer, but that consumption out of the aquifer affects stream flow.
And the aquifer is basically, it's like under the ground, right?
The big basin.
Big basin.
The Ogallala, it goes from Texas clear to North Dakota.
Holy smokes.
It's
okay.
a big dog.
It's called the Ogallala?
Ogallala Aquifer, yep.
And is that because the center of it's like Ogallala, Nebraska?
I have no
nothing
idea.
to do with it? Or
Nothing to do with it. I'm just envious of people in Nebraska because they've still got the lion's share of the water.
Oh.
We're sitting on, I told you, 17 feet of water. There's places in Nebraska where they've got 1,100 feet of water.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So they're not worried?
No, they're not really too worried about it. But in the Republican drainage in Nebraska, that's a different story. That was the big amount of water still sitting in north central Nebraska, but the southern part of Nebraska, where the Republican drainage is, they've still got lots of water, but it's not as good as north central. But
1,100. I mean, that's considerable. When you look at 17.
17 feet.
And then when this all started, it was 60, right? You said 60 feet, and that was back in the 90s?
1960.
Oh, in 60.
Yep.
So, I mean, so it's been going down steadily, but it's not like maybe it drops. I don't know what the math is there, like a foot a year?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, that's kind of what rule of thumb.
So obviously my first question is, if we only have 17 left, I mean.
That's in my area.
In your area.
Over here in Burlington, it's deep because the shale is the bottom of the bowl, the aquifer, and it's not a perfect bowl with it comes out of the ground, the shale does, over at Genoa.
Oh.
So if you can imagine the bowl, and that's kind of the way it is.
Like the top of that's over at Genoa?
That's the top of it. And as the water has declined down and it's not just a smooth decline, there's highs and lows. There's pockets of water left versus actually aquifer water left. It's still aquifer water, but it's not being fed by anything. And when that little pocket's gone, it's gone.
So then what happens?
Then you go to your neighbor and see whether you can tap into their supply, because that's what's going to happen. There are people in Kit Carson County already that don't have adequate water in the aquifer left, even for domestic or livestock. They have to pipe it from the neighbors. No joke.
So how does that work? I mean, you actually have to create the pipeline, and you're getting the
put
water.
in. Yeah, I mean, there's the government helps do that, and like over in the Lyman area, now that's outside the Ogallala. There's big ranches west of Lyman, and they have over in the last 20 years put in. They were running out of their water supply sooner than we were. There's miles and miles of pipeline, but there's no water to put in it.
Where are they pulling from? A different aquifer? Because the Front Range has some of its own water that makes its way down here, right?
Nope.
No?
None of the Front Range water makes it out here.
Because they consume it all or it just...
We're isolated from that water. The aquifer that we pump out of, the shale, comes out of the ground. Nothing else can come in. The only recharge we have here is water that falls from Mother Nature,
rain, right,
makes it to a sand creek, and can percolate down into the aquifer. But the problem is over time, we do a better job of holding that water on the soil surface and not letting it run off. So we use 6 to 7 gallon. This is what the engineers tell us. We use 6 to 7 gallon for agricultural purposes for every gallon of recharge we get.
That's not good.
No. So you can see.
So we're just really out using what Mother Nature's giving us.
And it's not sustainable. I mean, to keep the economic engine going at the rate we're going now, to shut that off is the only way to sustain the aquifer.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay.
Well,
so you got to start looking at conservation then.
Oh, hugely. We should have been doing it 20 years ago, but I guess it's better to start now.
Well, and then how do you start measuring? So like yours is 17, and there's places here where it's like maybe 30 or something.
Well, they got way more water than that even, because the shale is deeper here.
Okay.
We're about 250 feet to shale from the soil surface over at northeast of Stratton. We have the Plains Groundwater Management District, all the groundwater management districts in the Republican Basin in northeastern Colorado. It runs from let's say, Shine Wells clear to Julesburg.
Okay.
From the state line over to down I-70, it would be at Genoa, let's say, just as an easy. So from Genoa, you draw a line southeast to Shine Wells, and that's going to cover it. And from Genoa, clear to the northeast corner of the state.
So kind of like a triangle covering that.
And there's 8 groundwater management districts in that area, and they monitor the depletion of the aquifer annually. So we know we've got good data on how much water is left in my township northeast of Stratton versus the Burlington area, for instance. We know the numbers.
So there's those 8 different organizations.
Yep.
And when do they measure that? Is it like every January or something, or
December? It's the winter months when the agricultural pumping is at a standstill.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yep.
Okay.
So that we see where we're at.
It's like if you were checking your oil and you leave the car off for a while because it's not okay.
Yep, exactly. Because each well creates a cone of depression right at the well site. Okay. It takes time for that water to migrate and fill that back in, so that you get an accurate reading count of what the top layer of the water, where is it at today?
And has the depletion been consistent, like year over year? Is it getting worse or better, or just kind of the same?
You know, it goes with Mother Nature. 2012, we consumed a boatload of water. 2002, but both of those were extreme drought years, a lot of heat. And it kind of goes along, it ebbs and flows, but it goes with what precip we get.
Gotcha.
Because the more precip we get, the less water we've got to pump to maintain the crops.
So they formed you guys in 2004 to try and not have people fight over the issues. Is that right?
Well, to assist the state in getting into compact compliance. And there was a lot that went into that. We were told by the state that if we retired about 30,000 acres out here of irrigated ground, we'd be in compact compliance.
And that means that you're not using more than they see that you should be using to be sustainable long term. Is that what that means?
No, not sustainable. We're just staying in compact compliance. Because sustainability is, I mean, that's one issue over here that's really hard to attain.
Right.
If we want to keep the economic engine going. But on the other side, if we want to, we're going to continue to keep the economic engine going, but we still have this obligation. The state still has the obligation to stay in compact compliance at the gauging stations on the Republican River downstream. We've got to send X number of acre feet downstream annually.
Okay, so that's what the compliance means. We have to make sure per agreement that we're sending what we said we would.
Yep.
And that's going to Kansas and
Kansas and Nebraska. Yep. Our water goes into Nebraska first, with the exception of there's parts of it that go through the northwest corner of Kansas, but then back into Nebraska. The gauging station for the South Fork of the Republican, which Bonnie Reservoir is on, is at Benkelman, quite a ways downstream. We won't go into that because we don't have time to try to explain that.
But one thing I did, because it made me think about the Bonnie thing, right? Because when I got here in 2014,
okay,
and I hear great stories about Bonnie, you know, I mean,
I grew up boating there.
Boating, and just you hear some crazy stories, right? It was just a different time and a lot of fun. But that whole Bonnie was part of this whole thing then too, because Kansas, because of the compliance, is that why that ended up happening? Or because I honestly don't. I mean, I'm uneducated when it comes to what caused us to lose Bonnie.
Bonnie was drained as a result of the compliance issue.
Okay.
Bonnie was going dry by itself, though. Why? Mother Nature and the pumping. The pumping is what the agricultural pumping, the high capacity wells that are pulling out hundreds of thousands of acre feet annually out of the aquifer. That top of that aquifer is what feeds those streams. For instance, on the South Fork, very little water today migrates in the off season downstream. As soon as the wells kick on, that water goes away. So years ago in the 80s we had a big pool of water sitting in Bonnie. But we had more water in the aquifer to feed it.
Gotcha.
Over time.
From the streams that were coming up. And, okay.
It was coming off the top of the aquifer, feeding the streams that was keeping water in Bonnie. But over time, that diminished, stream flow diminished, and the water level just continued to go down, down, down. And we never had that big storm event that would fill it back up. In 14, or whenever the state decided to pull the plug on it, because from the compact standpoint, the state of Colorado had to, as part of their compliance piece equation, was accountable for anytime you put a reservoir in, and we know why it was put in, because of the 35 flood. Okay,
I didn't know that. Yeah, so that's because it really flooded, and they needed a place like Chatfield, right?
100 and some people lost their lives downstream from on the South Fork.
Ooh.
And the Republican, where it all came together. I mean, it was a devastating night.
And where was that at? Like by Ray or?
Well, it started north of Stratton.
Jeez.
Yeah.
And so that was a massive flooding event.
Like,
and they're like, we got to
24 inches in a 10-hour period.
Act of God. Yeah.
Ooh, it was major. I've never seen anything like it in my lifetime, but those storm events is what you rely on to keep these reservoirs full. We didn't have it anymore. And the decline in the Bonnie, it got to the point where we were still being charged, the state was, for the seepage back down to anytime you put a structure up, as I was trying to say earlier, you put a structure up to maintain flooding capabilities, the prevention of flooding, that water sets there. Anytime there's water setting, it's either evaporating or it's seeping down into the aquifer. Both of those were accounting for a fair amount of compact compliance that we couldn't deal with. And the only way to deal with it was drain it and get rid of it. And so that's what we did.
Okay,
the state did.
Right, because so much was being lost because
And we have
and
to
there was
count.
less to replenish it, and you have to get a certain amount out.
I want to say that, and it's been a day or two since I pulled that number up.
Yeah,
a lot of brain
years,
cells,
right?
Yeah,
I mean,
a lot of brain cells have gone, by the way,
Sure.
since then. But I want to say that was about 5,000 acre feet of compliance water that we had to come up with, and so it just made sense to. And we could not. The state of Colorado could not negotiate with the state of Kansas to get some kind of forgiveness on that piece, because even people from Kansas wanted to maintain a presence with water in that reservoir on Bonnie because they recreated there.
Yeah, so it's not like they were like, yeah, drain it. I mean, they saw they really enjoyed it as well.
They were complaining to their state, saying, no, don't make Colorado drain that thing. But ours.
And then occasionally, every so often, I'll hear a rumor, oh, Bonnie's coming back. That's probably not going to happen, right?
No.
Okay.
I doubt it. I mean,
just from what we've talked about.
If we have a major storm event that would fill it, or even partially fill it, the plug would be pulled. It's still pulled, and anything just is going to pass right through. The problem is it's going to take quite a while for it to pass through because the outlet structure doesn't allow. If that thing filled, it would probably take 9, 10, 12 months to drain it. And
into the aquifer?
Well, no, downstream.
Oh, downstream.
Downstream.
Okay.
There is a way for it. You can bypass the water through the dam structure and let it spill out on the other side into the spillway. But that takes a lot of time when you've got tens of thousands of acre feet back on the backside that you're trying to get through this 36-inch outlet.
That would take a long time. Yeah. But then that would also take a huge event that we haven't had to fill it up.
Yep.
But never say never, so.
Oh, we're a day closer, I guarantee you.
Yeah.
I mean, look at history.
No, yeah, you're right. Eventually, history says it will happen again.
In my lifetime, I've never seen the South Fork of the Republican north of Stratton run. I'm 66 years old. And 20 years ago, I was already asking, because of my involvement with the water, I was asking the old timers that still lived up there that went through the 35 flood. When was the last time they saw it run? They couldn't tell me.
Wow.
So that was a major storm event that took place. I mean, that was could it be one in 150-year storm?
Yeah.
200-year storm?
So you never know, though.
Yep.
So when you look back on the last 16 years of being on that board, are you glad that you served on that? I mean, it feels like you guys accomplished what you were wanting to. I'm sure it must have been contentious because it is a tough conversation and there's people that are losing water, right?
Well, it's so complex because we live in a very complex basin, east to west, north to south. We don't have nearly as much water as they have north of here. The deeper water is north of here, but even it is declining. So to come up with programs, I can't imagine what the United States government goes through when they try to come up with a program where they're trying to make one plan fit 50 states. And here we were trying to make one plan fit 8 counties, and it was a struggle. And it still is a struggle to this day, especially in the conservation piece. But we retired 30,000 acres, going back to that. We got that accomplished, but we weren't able to recover enough water from those retirements to make up and be back in compact compliance.
So as it stands right now, we're not in compliance?
We are in compliance.
Okay, we are.
But we have a pipeline that puts us in compliance. After a short period of time, I would say 04 to 07, even already in 06, we started to figure out that this retirement ain't going to work. I mean, it's a good thing for those areas where we retire the water because it leaves it in the hole for domestic and livestock use, okay? But we weren't going to get into compact compliance because what happens when you retire a well 30, 40 miles away from the stream? I don't know whether it's 40. Yeah, I mean, it could be 20. Let's say 20 miles. Mm-hmm. The impacts from that well that has been pumping for 40 years, the impacts from that well. Let's back up. If your well's sitting right on the stream, you shut it off. It's an immediate impact to the stream flow.
Gotcha.
That makes sense. Mm-hmm. If you're away 20 miles,
it's going to take a while.
The impacts of the negative impacts from that pumping continue to hit the stream year after year after year. So retirements weren't going to be the answer. So the agreement between the three states back in 2002 was it allowed any one state to put in a pipeline to get into compact compliance. That's the direction we went.
And what year was that when you decided to do the pipeline?
About 2007. Because by 2007, we had bought the water Actually, we bought it in January of 2008. We bought 56 permits up northeast of Ray. And in the most ideal spot, a family came to us and said, hey, we think we've got what you need.
Gotcha.
We paid a price for it, but by today's standards, it still looks like it was a good deal for everybody.
Right.
Both sides. That water would be worth twice of what it is today. I mean, what we paid for it, we'd have to pay twice.
Right.
Today.
So it made sense. And then, so that pipeline is pumping it, and where's it ending up then right now?
Okay.
It's going into Kansas and Nebraska, or?
The pipeline is approximately 13 miles long from, it's northeast of Ray.
Okay.
Is where our well field is. We're in the deepest part of the aquifer in Colorado with the best sustainable amount of water. It's a good deal. Got 13-mile of pipeline that dumps it. We dump it in right into the North Fork, less than a half a mile from the gauging station. So Kansas could not, if you'd dumped it into the North Fork 5 miles upstream, we'd had stream loss that Kansas would have wanted accounted for. This way, doing what we did and getting the water bought where we bought it, and being able to dump it in, it was everything kind of came together.
So here you go, Kansas. You can't blame us. It's coming right there.
And we want 100% credit for every gallon, for every acre.
Because you don't have seepage on those 5 miles. It's right there.
It's right there. So
are they pretty? So where we stand today is we're in compliance. Mm-hmm. They're happy, I guess, right?
For the most part. I mean, there's still an issue. Okay. We're in compliance statewide, but there's a total of 4 tests to keep us in compliance. There's the statewide test that the pipeline takes care of, but we still have to be in compliance on the North Fork, the Irrigator, and the South Fork. We're out of compliance on the South Fork, typically. The statewide, we satisfy it by the pipeline. But technically, the South Fork is an issue for us. So
what does that mean if we're out of compliance? Do they fine us? I mean, do they tell us, hey, get that water over here?
They've negotiated a deal where by 2029, Kansas wants the state of Colorado to retire 25,000 acres on the South Fork. Okay? The 3 states have carved out an area on the South Fork that comes down through this Burlington area, west of Burlington, clear down to the southern part of Kit Carson County. 80% of this irrigation in this, what we call the South Fork focus zone, where we're trying to concentrate dollars to retire water to the tune of 25,000 acres, is what the agreement says we have to do. And if we achieve that, the caveat is the South Fork issue goes away. This was the first time Kansas didn't require stream flow, actual wet water in the stream, to be at some gauging station. They just simply said, you retire 25,000 acres, and on the South Fork, we're good to go. So it's very vital that the basin.
And that's by 2029?
Yes. There's a 10,000 acres requirement by 2024.
Gotcha. So it's like in little sections.
Two sections.
When I hear you say retirement, it makes me think of a term, eminent domain. Is that kind of what it's like? I mean, because
it's all voluntary.
Oh, it's voluntary.
Yep.
And then, so if you're going to retire that kind, are you going around to people and people are saying, "Hey, I'll do that"? Do they get compensated? I mean, I guess how does that work?
Yes, we've got federal programs.
Good job. That sounds good.
Anyway, we're good.
You're good.
We're good. We've got we get federal dollars through what we call the CREP program, the Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program, which is an irrigated brother to dryland CRP. Okay, at least that's the way we're using it in Colorado, is for irrigated CRP. You retire your water permanently. You get compensated per acre up to, we're going to talk about this a little bit. Each county's got a different rental rate. Okay. We were at $180 an acre in Kit Carson County since 2014. So the feds put in $180 per year. The district puts in about $20 to $30 a year into that program per acre for the retirement. In other words, if you retire a circle of 120, 130 acres, you're going to get paid for 15 years, $200 an acre in Kit Carson County, let's say. Now, that's not the case right now, but I'll clarify that. So it's a pretty good deal. It's not like you're being hung out to dry, although some people still don't care for it. And we don't get the big water, we get the small water.
Right.
By that, you see what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
if it's not economically feasible to keep their economic engine going because they just literally don't have enough water left, they retire it.
Because they're like, look, I'm already losing this battle.
Yep.
It makes sense at
Yep.
this point to retire it and
Yep.
then figure something out.
Yep.
So you don't anticipate, I mean, there's going to be people that are volunteering.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a big
In the
push
past,
right now.
is that how it's been? I mean,
You know, we've kind of went through ebbs and flows. In 2006, we had a huge sign up. I mean, people, that's when we retired the 30,000 acres was in one season, basically.
wow.
And since then, because commodity prices in the 07, 08 range, they took off.
Yeah, I remember that.
Well,
Yeah.
Retirements were non-existent.
Oh,
And they
okay.
have
So
been.
it's almost inverse to the prices.
So yeah, it's a voluntary with financial compensation. We don't, nobody's coming out here and saying, you're going to shut your water off and
Yeah.
you're going to
And
be
for some
dry land.
people, it makes sense. And it depends on the commodities.
Right. And you know, the philosophy is, you know, if you've got good water yet and you don't want to retire, don't, because that engine that you've got out there is still helping generate economy for the entire basin. And people don't realize what that water's done for us since the 60s
Right.
when it was developed here in eastern Colorado. Because if you go west of here, down I-70, where they've never had the ability to access the aquifer.
Like what? Give me like.
Well, from Flagler on.
Okay.
Flagler has limited. Their community is still pretty thriving, but you go west of there, Araba, Genoa.
It's all dry land pretty much then.
Yeah, I mean, very much so. And so as the water goes, so do those communities. And even in my lifetime, my little community of Stratton, it is not what it was from a business standpoint. The population is pretty much the same, but the businesses are, and even in Burlington County seat, in my lifetime, when I think of the business up and down Main Street, they're just gone. And it all hinges on what that aquifer's done for us.
Well, and I mean, the interesting thing about some of the things that are going on in the world today is we are seeing, and I'm seeing this, there's a push for people moving rural.
Sure.
And I'm seeing more of that, believe it or not. And because of some of the satellite part of our business,
Right.
you start seeing people that are moving out of Westminster. I had one from Arvada. They're going down to La Junta. They're coming. I mean,
Yep.
it's interesting. So
Well, it's interesting, but it's also putting extra stress on those systems in the rural Colorado
Yeah.
that are now having to adapt to, holy cow, how do we do this? Where are we going
Yeah.
to get the water? I mean, to me, people keep moving into the front range of Colorado in droves
Right.
from California, let's say. And to me, the economic growth that Colorado wants along the front range is just astounding. But the piece that they haven't got figured out is where's the water going to come from?
for everything,
Because the aquifers up there are getting tapped out too.
really.
And it's all hinged on then what the runoff is.
And that's snowpack. And then
if
we have some of
Mother
these years
Nature-
where there isn't
yeah.
the snowpack.
And if Mother Nature decides, it ain't going to happen this year, there's not a darn thing we can do about it.
So what would happen if you had a major drought or something, right? And then let's say in like 5-6 years, and we just said, hey, sorry, Kansas, we're not going to be in compliance and we're not going to be able to retire it. I'm just curious. I know it's a hypo, but I mean,
that's the ultimate concern, and the answer to that is it wouldn't be good.
okay.
Because Kansas is going to do whatever they've got to do to preserve their livelihoods. They need the water just like we do. We've got an obligation, and if we can't fulfill that obligation, if we get out of compact compliance, even though we're making our best effort, the state of Colorado is going to have to come in and do something, and nobody's going to like that. So they're trying to give us the ability today to say, we're not going to do it. You guys figure this out. You come up with conservation plans. You reduce the consumptive use to prolong the life of this aquifer. We will help, but you come up with the plan.
I think I understand. Yeah.
Rather than us shove it down your throat.
We're going to fix it because you're not.
Yep.
And then I understand what it would do is it would kick it up to a higher level, is what you're saying, at a governmental level.
We don't want that to happen if we can keep it from happening.
Okay. Well, that was really insightful. And so what, this new committee you're on, what's different about that?
Well, I guess I'm not sure which committee you're talking about.
Well, you said that you switched, right? You went off
the
Colorado groundwater?
The Colorado Groundwater Commission is a state entity that oversees all the groundwater pumping in the state of Colorado. I was appointed to that. Just as important, though, is what the individual, and probably more important, is what the individual groundwater management districts here in the basin, the Republican Basin, are attempting to do starting, let's say, a year ago. There's been a definite push in the basin, speared by the Republican River Water Conservation District, because working with the state, we have a pretty good understanding of, hey, we got to do something. We got to stay in compliance. We've got to reduce our consumptive use annually. Groundwater management districts, you've got the authority to do that. The RRWCD, by statute, does not have the authority to reduce consumptive use. That has been left to the groundwater management districts from the act which was signed, I'm drawing a blank as to when, it was like in the late 60s.
Okay.
The Groundwater Management Act was signed into law by the state of Colorado and formed these groundwater management districts, and it gave them the authority to govern how the water is going to get used. Now, that's been a pretty much uniform system, but now moving forward with our conservation piece that we're trying to implement, every district, every groundwater management district is going to look a little bit different because of the amount of water they've got left in the aquifer.
And how they're going to manage it.
And how we're going to manage it. And that is a huge, huge undertaking for these groundwater management districts, because farmers, they know something's coming. And the human nature side of it says, we're not going to like this. But they're doing it right across the state line in Kansas and Nebraska, and they're making it work. So we're saying to our folks, well, if they're doing it, why can't we do it? It's to our benefit, and we should be concerned about. My philosophy on this is, how do I want to say it? The Plains Groundwater Management District in Kit Carson County needs to be very concerned about the water they have left and not be bothered with what other districts are trying to do and how they're going to try to achieve it. We need to figure out a system that works for us. Now, there's going to be some similar methods attempted across the basin in these groundwater management districts, and they're really doing a I don't know how to say it, a very good job of trying to analyze what they're doing over in Kansas and Nebraska and saying, let's not reinvent the wheel here.
If it works,
let's piggyback onto what they've done. There's been a lot of meetings with those folks in those other two states to say, tell us how you did this, because their process was huge and very long and very expensive. So we're trying to short circuit that somewhat.
Yeah, learn from their mistakes.
Yeah.
And yeah. So how many people are on your committee?
Well, the task force, as it's being called, of the Republican River Water Conservation District has one representative from each of the groundwater management districts. So that means there's 8 on this committee trying to come up with a plan, a standard that says, okay, across the basin, nobody can use more than X, whatever that is. And each individual district may have a standard that's going to be greater than that, because the amount of water that they have dictates that guys, we can't pump at the rate the neighbors over here because they've got way more water than we've got. So based on what we've got left, like the Plains District is working on developing this plan, and it's all about how much water you got left is going to dictate how much water you can pump moving forward. And then that's going to be a 5-year. In other words, what they do is they say, I'm just going to throw out some rough numbers.
Okay.
And for easy figuring, we're going to say 20 inches. You can pump 20 inches a year. Now, some of these wells can't even pump 20 inches. So it's not going to be 20. It's going to be something less, maybe 15, maybe 12. Okay. I don't know what it's going to be. But whatever that number is, you take it times 5, and over a 5-year block of time, that is how much water you can pull out of the aquifer. You manage it however you want. You can pull it all out the first year, or in the first 2.5 years, 3 years. That means you got to go dry land the last 2. People are going to manage it however. We don't want to dictate that. We're just saying X number of inches of water in this 5-year block of time.
And when you're saying manager, are you talking about like individually or as an entity?
As a well owner.
Okay, so it is really as a well owner. You're saying, hey,
you can use this much water over a 5-year block of time.
So how do you convey that message to them? I mean, do they just get it in the mail, or
it's all got to be done very legally?
Right.
A groundwater management district has the ability. The state's got a standard. Okay. The standard is you can pump up to 30 inches
a year.
A year. That's 2.5 acres. That's 2.5 feet of water per acre. That's a boatload of water.
That seems like a lot of water.
Well, it is, but in some soil types and in some parts of the basin, they can do that. Their wells are still big enough.
That's
not
a
sandy
problem.
textured soil, they have to.
Oh, okay.
Or at least they think they have to.
Okay.
Down here, it's a whole different ballgame. But what I was trying to say is the state, on your permit, sets this standard of 2.5 acre feet per acre. Most permits are 400 acre permits, 400 acre foot annually that you can consume. And that's based on 160 acres times 30 inches a year. That's how they came up with the 400. If you do the math, it's 400 acre feet. So a groundwater management district can restrict that further. Okay, we can't make it less restrictive, but we can turn the screws down and make it tighter. So we can change in the Plains district. We could change that permit. We're not going to mess with the permit. All we're doing is saying you can't pump more than X. And there's a real legal process that we have to go through as a groundwater management district to make all this happen, so that the public is aware of what we're doing, and they have a chance to. There's going to be a lot of information meetings because this is going to be a process
coming up where you're.
This whole thing's got to evolve, and people, I think for the most part, since the RRWCD was formed in 2004, there's a little bit different water mentality. People understand that we can't keep doing what we're doing and make it sustain and last.
Right.
So it's time to pony up and start pinching it down.
And that's where you have to keep messaging. It's the messaging, and I mean,
communication's got to be huge in this whole thing.
Gotcha. And then so like, man, the amount of work that goes into that. I mean, how many hours do you spend on this a week? Or a month? I mean,
a lot. I don't.
Yeah,
I don't.
No,
I don't even want to say, but
I mean, a lot. I guess
it's a lot of volunteer time. I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Because it's not a paid position, then, right? Mm-hmm. It's all volunteer. Mm-hmm. Wow, man. So, yeah. And then, so like, is it like an electrical meter, right?
The meter.
I mean, they're going to go check, because how do you make sure that they don't, the wells, how do you make sure they don't use more than 20?
Every well has a water meter on it already.
And people go around and check it. And
oh, yeah. You've got to turn in data every year. What your meter reads, how many acre feet of water you consumed in a calendar year. It's got to be.
What if they go over?
Well, there's issues.
You get fined?
There's penalties and fines.
Penalties and fines.
And like over in Nebraska and Kansas, if you go over the amount that this conservation plan allows you to use, it's not monitored necessarily yearly, because you can use it however you want, just as long as you don't exceed X number of inches at the end of the 5 years. But at the end of the 5 years, if you go over, there are some serious consequences in Kansas.
So that's okay in Kansas.
Yep, and we're going to adopt the same thing.
So you just have to make sure you're managing it, look at the drought conditions, and really forecast over the next 5 years.
Producers, that's going to be on the producer to come up with that.
Gotcha.
And throughout the basin, it'll be that way, I'm assuming.
Yeah. So if people are listening to this or watching it, I mean, what are the big things coming up that they need to be aware of? Like meetings or, I mean.
One thing that they need to be aware of the fact that this discussion is taking place in the basin as a group of groundwater management districts, but each individual groundwater management district is having that discussion amongst themselves at their meetings. Producers in those groundwater management, everybody knows what groundwater management district you're pumping out of. We're in the plains.
Yep.
North here, it goes into the Irrigator. Even in parts of Kit Carson County, it's part of the Irrigator. So you know who the entity is that you're needing to pay attention to. And it would be great if producers would go get involved already at this level in the process.
Well, and explain to me what a producer means exactly.
Well, anybody that's pumping water's got a permit.
Okay. So that's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people.
So then do you have like a meeting like quarterly or semi-annually and everyone gets together? And
well, when we start doing these conservation plans and rolling that out, there's going to be, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of information put out in the press.
Okay.
Radio, but we're going to have meetings where we come in, bring the producers in, invite them in, explain what's happening, what direction we think we need to go based on, here's the data.
Get yelled at.
And it's really, oh yeah, that's a given, but it's not something to take lightly.
No, I know it's important. That's why I wanted you in here, because it's a big deal.
It is a big deal, and people need to understand. And what's funny is, to me, and you and I've had this conversation before, that young lady sitting right over there needs to be aware of this situation. Because guess what? She likes water too.
Yeah. I mean, well, and that was my next question. It's a great segue. I mean, like, what do you think people should know and be worried about? I mean, or concerned. That's a better word, concerned.
I would say that everybody needs to be involved in this discussion when it's made public. When we're asking for public comment as a groundwater management district throughout the basin, people need to get involved, whether they're a homeowner in a municipality, or they're actually a 35-acre tract out in the country, or if they've got a high capacity well that they're using for irrigation, for crop production. Everybody that consumes water needs to be in on this dialogue, in my opinion, because we all use it.
Right.
Agriculture uses 90% of the water that we take out of the aquifer, if not more.
Yeah, but that's a necessary use.
Well, is it or isn't it? I'm just going to throw
Well, you're a
something
farmer,
out.
so you would know, I mean, better than me.
Well, I went from irrigated ground to my family is completely out of the irrigation business.
So everything's dry land now?
Yep. So I've already made that transfer. And emotionally, it's a son of a gun, because you don't have that security blanket out there anymore. You are totally reliant on Mother Nature, and it's not any fun.
Yeah, that could
during
be
a
tough.
drought.
Yeah.
But when the aquifer kind of passes you by, so to speak, what choice do you have?
Well, and I mean, I guess, do people, from a concern standpoint, I mean, well, we're talked about compliance versus sustainability. I mean, are we thinking that eventually if it's at 17 and it's a foot a year in some places, what's going to happen when we get down to 3, 2? I mean, there's no way to stop that, right?
Well, the trouble is you can stop it by just
not using
it. And they claim that there'll be enough water for domestic and livestock use, but the trouble is the bowl is not flat bottomed. The water is going to eventually migrate in the soil texture down there that makes up this aquifer that's holding all this water. Mm-hmm. It's going to migrate to the low spot, correct? I mean, that's what water does.
Yeah, that's what it does. It seeps down, yeah.
When it migrates past you, you are SOL.
So,
yeah, I mean, you go down into Kiowa County, city of Eads, I'm not sure where they get their water. But there's people down in Kiowa County that actually truck water to their farms.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
Well, and
so my point is everybody needs to engage in this conversation, whether you're a homeowner relying on the city of Burlington for water, because guess what? They got the same situation.
Right.
So, yeah, it's just, you take water out of eastern Colorado, what's it going to look like?
Yeah, it's not good.
Not good.
So what's the next big meeting? Or, I mean, do you even know that at this point?
I can't tell you other than the fact that this committee, this task force of the RRWCD just met again, and I think for the second or third time. They're trying to pull this thing together. I know the Plains District here in Burlington, in Kit Carson County, is trying to put this together, and I would think that we maybe would have something by spring that we could roll out and say, here's what we're thinking, what do you think? And have it all very appropriately laid out so that we've got documentation as to, in a deal like this, when you're talking about people's livelihoods, you can't short circuit the system. You've got to go through and do due diligence and be able to document how much water's left. Your plan, how is that going to work? Everything. I mean, you've got to really have your act together, so to speak. And that takes time.
It does. And then as a homeowner, you're saying conservation then. I mean, that's the piece that you're going to, right? I mean.
Homeowners, they just need to be aware of what's going on, because I'll just say it like this. A homeowner that's got a 35-acre tract out in the country, he doesn't want to necessarily just leave this decision as to how much water we can pump by the big wells left to the big wells. That's kind of like leaving the fox in charge of the hen house, so to speak.
I gotcha. So it needs to be,
everybody needs to engage.
You need to engage to like make sure you're representing your interests.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, if you've got a domestic or livestock permit in your file cabinet that services your home out in the country, where you're allowed to pump 5 acre feet, maybe a big well, a big well, some of them are pumping 400 acre feet. Not in this area,
right?
But further north where they've got good water. Yeah, so a domestic permit is much smaller. And if we all were doing the much smaller stuff, it would be closer to sustainability with what's left. But it's not going to happen.
Okay,
because
so
if we shut everything off to the big wells off tomorrow, it would kill the economy.
Yeah, we don't want to do that.
And we don't want to do that.
Well, and it makes me think too then, so what do we get from Kansas? I mean, in Nebraska in return, right? I mean, how do you understand?
If we're in compliance, what we get from them is no guff. And as soon as we go out of compliance.
Well, who negotiated that? I mean, like, who says that? I mean, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, why?
There's a 3-state compact, what's it called? The RRCA, Republican River Compact Administration, which is made up of all 3 states. They're meeting on a regular basis, dealing with everything. And if we get out of compliance through that meeting, the 3 states are going to figure out what needs to be done. And so
because at some point they purchase the water from us, is that what I'm thinking?
No.
I mean, I'm just trying to understand like why they have a right to the water that's and they should. We're one country. I'm not saying that.
But let me explain that. After the 35 flood, okay, where 105 people lost their lives in the system. The 3 states went to DC and said, we need help for flood control. And they said, great, we will. We'll help you out. But first, you're going to divvy up the waters on the Republican.
Oh,
You figure out who gets what. And that compact was signed, I believe, in 42. And
it stands today.
And that stands today, and things are a lot different today. There was no groundwater.
That's very interesting, isn't it?
But
I mean,
that's those are the numbers we're still held to. And there's no recourse, because an attorney tells us this way. He says, the 3 states are sitting around the table. Colorado comes in and sits down and says, we really need more today because of the irrigation. In a compact, here's the way it works. There's so much water given to each state. There isn't any more. There's only so much. If I want more, you've got to give up something. And guess what? That doesn't happen.
Everyone's holding on to what.
Oh, heck yes.
Well, yeah.
I mean, you can get upset at Kansas because they've been kind of the fly in the ointment, so to speak, over the years. But when you stop and you look at it legitimately, not through your wallet, but you look at the whole system, all they're concerned for is their people downstream, because the water goes out of Colorado, northeast Kansas, into Nebraska, stays in southern Nebraska, and then tips back down into the state of Kansas, where their population base is. They want that water.
And they have elected officials that are fighting for them to get it. It makes sense.
That's the whole thing. It's no different than what they do up along the Front Range,
right,
on the Platte.
I'll have to. That'd be interesting to see that and read that and see what they came up with in 42. I'm sure it's.
Well, it's all.
It's all there.
Google it.
Okay.
You can read the whole thing. I mean, if you want to read that much paper, you go ahead. I just take the condensed version.
I have to be really bored, right? One night to do that.
Remember what I told you about my reading?
Yeah.
So,
well, no. And so, is there anything regarding water that we haven't touched on that you think is important for people, the message to get out, or before we transition to the
one message I would like to get out, and that is these retirement programs that we talked about earlier, this CREP program.
Yep.
Through the 2014 Farm Bill, we had a $180 rate in Kit Carson County. That's what the feds were paying per acre to retire an acre of ground, and they would pay that for 15 years. Now, there's a little thing called the National Agricultural Statistics Service. USDA runs their programs based on data of values that NASS gives to USDA. USDA is a big umbrella. There's the Farm Service Agency, the Natural Resources Conservation Service. NASS is also part of USDA. These other entities contract with NASS, and what NASS does is sends out surveys to farmers. And our data in Kit Carson County is skewed. The NASS data for irrigated rental rates only supports a $100 CREP payment. Instead of $180, it's $100. In the 2014 Farm Bill, they had to revisit that number, and here's this NASS data again with this $100. We sent in, when we saw that, because that was what our rental rate was going to be. It's a little hard to retire an acre of ground in Kit Carson County if they're only going to get compensated $100 an acre.
Versus the 180.
Versus the 180.
And then why is that? Because of the data that got back from the surveys?
Yes.
And why was it skewed?
Because people hate these surveys.
So they didn't fill it out correctly, or not enough filled it out?
Or none at all. But somewhere the data is just really not good.
So that's important to get the right data. That's what you're saying.
And there's an article coming out in the paper. Read it.
In the Burlington Record?
Yeah, all the papers in the basin.
Okay.
There's an article coming out trying to explain this to producers, that, especially in Kit Carson County, because what's weird is we're at 100. We were able to get the feds to adjust it up to 130, but that's still $50 short of the 180.
Right.
We don't think we're going to get any participation at this $130 level. Right across this county line, imaginary line, in Yuma County, it's 231. But I can understand that, because that county's got a lot of water, very aggressive lease competition. Washington County, I believe, is at 201. Lincoln County is at 180. And here, that's what the data supported. But
how do they come up with that number? We're saying the data, but how do you end up with 180?
Okay, well, let's back up. How do you wind up with the 100?
Okay.
The surveys are filled out. They go back to the the guys that take care of all the numbers in the NASS.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. They crunch all the numbers, and they say, based on the information that we were given,
this is what you should get.
This is all we can support. So we need to do a better job in Kit Carson County of getting that survey filled out.
That's important. I'm glad you brought that up.
It's huge.
So does that go out to every person that has a well?
It is no, not necessarily. It's kind of a random survey, but there's a lot of people that get this survey. It's random, but majority of producers get this survey.
So fill the survey
out. Most
out.
of them go.
So we need them to do it so that the people that do choose to retire it are going to get that higher number because it's based on data, not skewed.
Yep, exactly. Because the problem right now is we got people that don't maybe necessarily get a survey, but would like to retire their water, and they had no say in the deal. So we're trying to have a discussion with the National Agricultural Statistics Service, FSA, because they're the two players in this program,
right?
And saying, look, something's not right, and you guys are using a method, because in this discussion you can't go in and say you guys are stupid,
right?
It's just
that won't go very far.
It doesn't go very far. So
hey, you guys are morons.
So we're blaming ourselves first of all because we farmers are
taking accountability and making sure.
That's right. Gotcha. So, but moving forward, legitimately, how could we better their system? How can we help you, NAS, come up with a better system? The mousetrap we've been using for 50, 60 years maybe could be updated.
Yeah.
Because there's different. They don't put any value on a crop share lease. It's all about these irrigated leases.
Yeah.
Cash leases. Cash leases is what they're after. And I'm saying that a crop share lease isn't a cash lease, but it still has a value. And they don't give any consideration to that.
Oh,
they only will look at what a cash lease is. And they won't look at a family cash lease because.
So it is messed up. So when's this next survey go out?
Oh, we're hoping we got our data in our article out quick enough because the next survey is coming out February 8th.
Okay. So let's make a note of that to put on February 8th, to put on Facebook when we post it.
Yeah.
That's the next NAS survey.
Yep.
And so it must be, how long does it take to fill a survey out? Because there's got to be questions
I can do it in less than an hour.
So an hour or somebody else a couple hours, but they're asking you questions that have to do with like usage,
basically
math, right? To arrive at a final number like that.
Most of these surveys have to do with production. Okay, so in other words, in the spring, you're going to get a survey. What are your planting intentions for corn this spring? So you're going to put in a number. Everybody's got the number already. So you put in the number. Because last fall we had to fill out how many planted acres of wheat did you have? You put in that number.
So they're trying to see what you're planting.
So they track that. I mean, that's the job of NAS, this National Agricultural Statistics Service. And they're only, I'm one of these idiots that I've religiously filled this out forever.
Right.
Because I realized as a young person with my dad's help saying, look, the data is only as good as what we feed them. So we got to give them good data. And today there is a major, major discussion about NAS data,
right,
nationwide.
Well, and especially because you look at the discrepancy there. And I mean, if somebody today decided, hey, raise their hand, they're like, okay, I'm ready to retire.
Right.
Mine's getting low.
Right.
It makes sense. They're going to be less likely if it's skewed and it's 100 versus 180 or 220 or whatever.
It's so detrimental. One of the items that I mentioned in this issue paper that I was asked to write that we're going to send to the Rocky Mountain Region Director for this NAS, Bill Meyer, really nice guy. He's very interested in trying to better the situation. And I said, I want to help you. We want to help you as a Republican River Water Conservation District come up with a better mousetrap, so to speak. Because USDA, whatever's broke here in Kit Carson County, we need to figure out how to fix it because it's very detrimental to the programs that USDA puts out there. It hurts USDA because the money's not used the way they want it to get used because we're not going to get any takers.
Yeah.
And the producer is not benefiting in the manner that the neighbor right across that imaginary line in the other three counties is. So we got to figure out how to get this thing fixed. We're probably stuck at the 130 for 2021, but we've got to be ready to rock and roll a year from now. We got to have something figured out with NAS to get
Get
that,
that number,
that
at least
number.
get it accurate, get it up. So is there
And that's the fear, Troy. What we're going to try to do is get it corrected. But in correcting it, we may not like the answer. But if we get good, correct. If we get it correct, then we can live with it. But to see the discrepancies now and say that ours is only 100, something's not right.
Well, and so like in digital marketing, you could send stuff out in an email, right? And then you can track it. You can have an open rate. Right. Is that how you guys do with the survey? Where you go, we sent out 1,000 surveys, we got 400 back.
NAS does.
So do they have that data? Like what the last, is it annual?
NAS is the only one that collects the data.
No, but I mean, is it an annual survey?
Sure.
So what's the response rate?
I can't answer that. I don't know. And what I'm concerned about in Kit Carson County is, okay, it's going out to, I don't know, 150, 200 producers.
Only 10.
10 of them respond, and the same 10, and I'm not one of those 10 because I don't have any cash leases.
Right.
The same 10 are doing it. And what we have found in our discussions about this issue is farmers are reluctant. This is a very guarded number.
Okay.
Nobody wants to know what your neighbors, they don't want to know. But they don't want a producer that's renting ground. I'm renting ground from you, Troy Schultz. Okay. I'm going to lowball my cash lease, even though it's not right. I'm going to lowball it so that Troy thinks that, well, this must be the cash lease that everybody else is paying, so I need to lower mine.
I gotcha.
That's what happens.
So you have competing interests, and that's going to be hard then to get to the actual truth.
There's a way around it, I think, and that would be the NAS folks already collect production. They know what my farm yields, okay? And that's a very easy survey to fill out. I just go to my spreadsheets and say, here's the number. Here's the number of acres we harvested it off of, da-da-da. People would be more apt to say, okay, NAS, you know the numbers. Go to RMA and verify those numbers, the Risk Management Agency under USDA.
Okay.
Again.
Yeah, because it has
another
to be
entity.
There. Right.
The insurance piece is what RMA is.
Okay.
Okay, federal, and you've got to have it.
Yep.
You've got to report. They've got the gross dollar amount because they know from the insurance what the average cash price was paid for a calendar year. They know what the yield was in any one given county. They've got the gross dollar amount. There's ways for them to tap into it with existing information. What I see this maybe happening is they could get the gross here. So what they need to do is get the input costs. That's what the producer needs to do. And their survey needs to include cash inputs for fertilizer, corn seed, da-da-da, all the
so
above.
It can be accurate.
So that they, and I think most farmers would be more apt to say, okay, this is what I spend to raise an acre of corn, an acre of wheat, dry land, irrigated. That's easier maybe for them to do. And if they're not doing it, they need to be. But anyway, I think they'd be more apt to give that information up to NAS so that NAS could crunch all those numbers.
Yeah.
Rather than saying, here's my cash lease.
I gotcha.
So
it's a different way to arrive at the information.
Yep. So,
so hopefully
it's just an idea.
No, it's a good idea.
It's just an idea.
Because you got to get that number up. I mean, if you're going to have people volunteering, right? I mean.
Well, if there's no incentive.
They're
not going to volunteer.
Especially if it's because of skewed data.
Yep.
So that's a good message to get out there.
Yep. So the week of February 8th, it's a Monday. Sometime that week in your mailbox, you should be getting a mail out for a survey.
If you're a producer.
Yep. And it's unclear who gets it. The landowner or the renter. I mean, I get them as a renter. And so I don't know.
What should be the person that's actually doing the farming, right?
Well, that's the renter is the tenant is the one that's actually doing the farming. Yeah.
To get an accurate idea. Okay.
So
all right.
Just please take the time to fill out that survey accurately and do whatever you can to get that number up as high as you can. If you've got a lease that's a $200 an acre lease, get that data in there so that they can plug that into the formula and use it.
Because you're helping other people that might really want to retire.
This is not just about you.
Okay.
This affects what your decision, how you fill out that survey, not only affects you, but your neighbor.
Okay. It's a good message.
It's that simple. So anyway.
Okay. All right. Thanks for talking about water. Now, yeah, it goes fast, doesn't it, man? It goes fast. Let's talk about.
I just don't know how to shut up.
No, this is good stuff, man. Let's talk about the thing that you're working on. Is this the top secret seal?
No, it's not. It's not.
No, but I mean, I think it's a really good idea. And so
I know exactly how I want to open this up.
Okay.
You watch TV, right?
No.
Okay.
Nope, I do. I watch TV.
Okay, there's a little TV that there's this thing that interrupts what you're really trying to watch called commercials.
Yep.
There's a new commercial on. It's about, I forget what kind of beer it is. And they're producing this beer with organic everything. So here's the.
This is organic.
Well, I'm just saying here are the different options you got when you buy their beer. They've got different flavors.
Okay.
And in rolls this coin.
He's grabbing a quarter.
Well, I found it on the floor.
We found that on the floor. That's your lucky quarter there.
This quarter, when it rolls onto the scene of this commercial.
Make sure you're talking into this.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Says USDA.
Oh, it says that on the commercial when you see it, or?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yes. That's the point I want to make. That label in organic growing, those guys have done it. It's all agriculture. It's all good. And I'm envious of the job that they've done trying to promote organic. And they've gotten it to the point where USDA is comfortable putting their label on even today beer, not just bread, whatever.
So the USDA, they're saying, hey, this beer is organic. What does organic mean?
Means no pesticides, no fertilizers, all the stuff from the production end of it out in the field.
Yeah, but how can that be real?
But it is. But it's not, I'll say it this way. If, to me, organic, I hate to say it this way because I might upset somebody, but
that's okay. I mean, it's the way it goes.
Here's the deal. Organic, if American agriculture today was forced by the government to raise everything organic, in that same equation, they'd have to figure out, okay, so what are we going to do with all these people that are going to die from starvation? Because we can't produce enough food organically to feed the world. We just can't.
Right. If organic means no pesticides, but I mean,
no nothing. I mean, nothing. You look at some of these organic grows out in the field, and oh my gosh, my heart goes out to the producer that's trying to capture this economic gain from the organic quarter, so to speak.
What is the economic gain? It's because people are trying to buy it because they say
will
it's
pay.
organic?
They will pay way more for it,
like at a Whole Foods or something.
Yes, yes, that type of marketing system. Because you go into Safeway, King Soopers, whatever.
There's the little organic section.
Yeah, and they all got that quarter emblem. It's more like a silver dollar.
I'll have to look out for that. No, I know. I know what you mean.
It's got the USDA logo on it.
Yeah.
To give, and what it does, and what I think, there's two pieces of this in my thought process is, one, it does give the American consumer that, hey, this is the best I can possibly buy. But it is literally for the financially elite, because it is, here's the average cost of groceries, here's non-GMO, here's organic. You're paying a super duper premium for that grocery.
Price in inflation now too, which is coming down the road, right? So
yes,
it's good.
It's hard to fathom how that all plays out.
What's non-GMO versus organic?
Okay, non-GMO is non-genetically modified organisms. There's none of that going on. In other words,
is that even possible though? Because I mean, almost all seeds have been modified, right?
Well,
over the last 40 years.
The three of us sitting in this room, guess what? We're genetically modified.
Well,
we were the genes of our parents.
Yeah,
were the product of that melding of those genes together. Plants have been doing it for years. The rap that GMO got was Monsanto. When Monsanto perfected the ability to speed up that genetically modification process rather than doing it through the normal way before the technology was there, it was all done through plant breeding. Okay.
Which would take
same end result, but the length of time was Monsanto shortened that time up to 2 years versus 10 years.
Wow.
I mean, it was that dramatic. But there are those in the country, in the world, that believe that genetically modified organism is not good for you. But yet they've been eating it their entire life. Every generation has ate, even back before I was born, which is a long time ago. It was all genetically modified, but it was natural. Monsanto just figured out how to shoot the gun, shoot the gene in there, and bingo, we got it. Well, that has allowed American agriculture and agriculture worldwide to keep up with the demand for food. Okay? Without that piece today, if you plant this corn stalk, okay, and it's genetically modified to adapt to, you could put Roundup on it. It's naturally going to take care of the rootworm. I'm drawing a blank. Another worm.
Yeah, worms.
And it's all natural.
Right.
You don't have to spray any pesticide on it to keep that worm out of that plant.
That would be better than having pesticides, correct?
Well, you would think. But there's a push. The non-GMO folks have made such a big deal out of this. They have, there's been lawsuits with Monsanto for years over this deal. And they've actually got it to the point where, okay, we're going to raise it, and it's going to be beef, non-GMO. Nothing of the raw product, the feed stuffs that were fed to that animal didn't have any genetically modified organisms to grow it. In other words, nothing that Monsanto did or anybody else, and it's all going to be non-GMO or organic. It's kind of a stair step. To be this way, to be organic, you're obviously non-GMO.
Right.
But in the supermarkets, there's people that raise stuff non-GMO, but they don't take it to that next level and sell it as an organic.
Why? What would make it not organic if it's non-GMO?
Not sure how they determine that, but there is a distinction. Go into the grocery store and pay attention in the produce department, especially.
Okay.
There's non-GMO and there's organic. What I'm saying is since the '85 Farm Bill, that's when I first got involved with the conservation district here in Kit Carson County through the Burlington Conservation District. My first year with the district was the first year that USDA enrolled, the new farm program rolled out CRP again from the 50s. This is in '85. It had been laying there dormant for
35 years.
Anyway, part of that farm bill required every producer out there that's farming to have a conservation plan on his farm. You tell us how you're going to take care of that soil, because we're paying you to do that.
And that still happens now, right?
That
like
still
every year,
happens today.
every farmer has to have a conservation plan.
And they have to be updated periodically, but every acre is under a conservation plan somehow.
Is that only if you're borrowing money?
Nope.
So even if you're
everybody has a conservation plan. If you're taking any farm,
if you're selling any product,
if you're taking any subsidies from the federal government,
that's what I was getting.
You're going to have
everyone is. There would be no way you'd be an idiot not to.
Well, right? It's just the fact that economically speaking,
you have to.
You can't survive without it. Gotcha. Unfortunately.
Gotcha.
So, as a result of this '85 Farm Bill, we had to have these conservation plans, and these conservation plans are made up of what they call BMPs, best management practices. And if you Google best management practices on a computer, it goes to NRCS, USDA, and here is this whole myriad. And we've had to operate our farms according to these best management practices since the '85 Farm Bill. So my point is give us a label. Give the rest of us a label so that we can compete with these two guys. Because let that American consumer, let that American housewife that gets off work at 5 o'clock, I got to go grocery shopping tonight, especially during this pandemic. I feel bad because the pandemic is putting a lot of economic stress on the system in this country. They want to buy this. They want to buy this, but they can only afford the average stuff that I produce.
Right.
They don't want to spend, they can't get as many groceries here or here versus here. The dollar they spend, they can buy more groceries if they just buy the run-of-the-mill bread, not GMO, not organic. But these people that are buying this product need to understand that from a safety standpoint, it is as safe as either one of these two. And I haven't done a good enough job of trying to tell the public, the American consumer, about this one. These guys, they've done a fantastic job, and it's all agriculture. So it's hard to say, well, they maybe have skewed this a little bit,
right,
by saying that this is so much better.
And some of it could have been. I mean, there's motivation,
sure,
because it's more
they're
expensive.
getting paid more.
You're going towards a certain demographic,
sure,
too.
Sure.
So I see what you're saying. So how much is this the version that you're producing is? That's probably way higher.
Well,
overall, what is that, like 80%, 85% versus like organic and non-GMO? Or I know you might not know that.
I'd be willing to bet you that it's more like, I haven't seen recent statistics, but I'd be willing to bet you that this feeds 90% of the population in the world. This is 5, something like that. I mean, it's just
No, I got you. And so your concept is you want to come up with something here that also says, look, this is good. I mean,
give that consumer out there, when she walks in the grocery store, that, okay, this is okay. I'm okay with this, because this quarter can roll across this screen too.
Yeah. So you want to get a USDA label for that, and that's what what's your next step in that? Where are you at?
We're starting it right here tonight.
Okay. No. Well, yeah, but you told me about this months ago.
But because of the pandemic, I mean, I put together an issue paper, so to speak.
Okay.
And sent it to several entities. One was the Colorado Department of Agriculture, NRCS, because NRCS is the USDA overseer on our conservation plans. And I happen to know the state conservationist up in Denver very well. And I ran it by him. I ran it by Kate Greenberg. I think that's right. Yes. She's the commissioner for the state of Colorado. She loves the idea, but it's not something necessarily they're going to just jump on until there's enough groundswell to say, oh, okay, we need to start helping these folks out, try to promote this. Because what people don't understand in all of this is, when we produce this, we are producing it as safe as either one of these two. We don't put anything more on this than what we absolutely have to. Are we using more chemicals? Yes, there's no doubt. But the problem with food, as it goes through the system and goes to the shelf, goes to the store, goes to your refrigerator, it's not what we did in agriculture that is the problem. All of these still they have to put something on them for shelf life.
Oh, so even the organic and non-GMO still have something.
Have something. Because otherwise, even organic, to get it to the shelf and get it, I mean, take a look at bananas, organic bananas versus these or these.
Well, they still have to be on the shelf. And they got to have something on it to keep them. Yeah.
What I'm saying is you personally look at bananas that are raised organically.
Okay.
Non-GMO. This. I don't even know where they got non-GMO bananas. I don't know. These bananas, I wouldn't take out of the store because they're brown already. I mean, it's just like.
So I see what you're saying. Yeah.
But
okay.
Always the more ripe ones. When you go to look for bananas, the organic ones are always more ripe, but you're like, oh, that's not going to last a week.
Because and it looks. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
But my point is this is is as good as it gets. It needs as good as it needs to be. If you want these two and you can afford it, so be it. But give the American consumer, especially during this pandemic, I feel so bad.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason I just shelved this whole thing, because there was enough going on.
Yeah, there's a lot, and it's hard to focus. I get you on a new venture like that.
Oh, yeah.
A new concept.
And USDA working from home.
Yeah.
They didn't want to.
But at least you're getting that message out there. And so it's kind of twofold. The purpose is it helps 90% of over here of the farmers that are like, we're doing good stuff.
We're doing excellent.
The person that would be against it is the organic and non-GMO. But
so be it.
Yeah.
And to me,
it also helps other people with their psychology, right? Like, I'm not making a bad purchase here because it's non-GMO and organic.
I'm not killing my family.
Right. So that's your whole thing, because you actually feel like, it's kind of bogus that there's these labels on the other two. And
Not
then the
bogus.
other
they're legitimate, and it's all agriculture. I don't want to take away from that.
Okay, so
but
bogus
my point
is the wrong word. But
the point I'm trying to make is these two have out PR'd this one. They've done their homework. They've got the American consumer on board for non-GMO or organic. Not everybody can afford these two. So let's give these people. I mentioned this at a meeting one day. The guy says, he was from the Colorado Department of Ag. He was giving a presentation. He says, is there anything else? And I go, yeah, give us a label. And he looks at me and I go, I want a label. And he goes, for what? And I go, you guys have a label for this one. There's a big push for this one because it's not necessarily a USDA label, but it's non-GMO. That's what the American consumer.
What do you think this label would? Any idea or what it would be called?
I want this one.
The USDA.
And instead of saying organic, it would be, I don't know what the name would be, but it would have to be something to give the American consumer the confidence that this was grown with these best management practices. That's a longer term than.
Yeah. You'd have to think about something that would kind of
have to do something, but yeah, that's
everything there,
Yep. And then put us on an equal playing field. I don't have anything to gain from this. I mean, if it's not that I'm wanting to do this to, these two do it for financial gain. 90% of the food is produced here, and all we're trying to do is compete. That's all this is give us something so that we can compete with these two.
And make other people that are in that position to buy that feel
good about
okay.
it.
It's still, it's still good. It's still grown by our farmers. I mean,
like I said, 90% of the food in the world is still here.
Right.
It's not here. So, I mean, that's kind of it. That one in a nutshell. I mean,
okay.
This quarter thing, it's a bigger quarter though.
Yeah, it is.
It's a big quarter.
It's a giant quarter.
But I mean, it would just be how do I want to say it? For me, it's all about giving that housewife the confidence that when she walks out of there, she's got the best she can afford, and she doesn't have to be thinking, God, I wish I could afford this, because we need to explain to them that this is as safe as it gets.
Okay.
In the mass world. So there you go.
There you go.
Pretty much.
All right. We covered a lot today. So, and I've been trying to get you in here for a while. I don't know how long we've gone. What time is it? Oh, we've gone for a while.
We've gone for a while, but
and I want to say thank you, thank you for coming in. I mean, I really appreciate it. And this is one of those podcasts that really, I think, can make a difference. We're talking about things that are important to everyone.
Well,
and so you have a standing invitation to come back here anytime. I mean, as things roll forward, with those surveys, I learned so much in the last hour. I didn't have any idea.
On the waterfront?
In
general.
Yeah.
As the conservation plans develop, yeah, I'd be more than happy to come in and give you an update on where that process is at.
Yeah.
To try to help us get it out so that
take that survey. If there's one message out of today, it's that survey's coming and it's important. So
yep.
All right.
And then be part of the bigger conservation plan being developed locally.
Yep.
There's the other one.
And be aware.
And your quarter.
And the quarter. All right. We're wrapping up. Okay.
Right.
Thanks, Tim.
You bet.
I appreciate it.
You bet.